Well, good afternoon, guys. On this August 24th, I am back in Oahu for the first time in about a year, and I figured to talk about some more plants you can find here. I definitely prepared a lot more, but I still really gonna probably not know what a lot of species are. Unfortunately, it's just kind of hard to identify tropical plants. Even right here, we're definitely not gonna find that much native ones on the Kealia trail, which is we're gonna hike today, because it's just a lowland area, and lowlands in Hawaii generally have a lot more habitat degradation and invasive species. I mean, right here, this entire forest is almost completely dominated by Leuceana leucocephala, which is definitely an invasive species, perhaps the most invasive in Hawaii, commonly called Haole Koa. It was introduced from Mexico and Central America as a form of forage, and that's unfortunately just completely taken over the islands in the drier lowlands. So much so that almost nothing else exists, and whatever was able to survive that was also very heavily suppressed by this grass we see in front of us, which I believe is Urochloa mutica, commonly known as California grass, which is a pretty nonsensical name because it's not really native to California. I think it's either South America or maybe Africa. I can't really remember for sure, but either way, it could have been accidental or is again a source of forage, and it's just taken over everything here. And you're almost not going to find anything native growing amongst here except maybe some Hawaiian cotton if you look closely enough. There's also this pea vine I found here. It's an example of it, but it's growing quite a lot of the trees here. I don't believe it's native, but if it is, that'd be really cool because it'd be like a native species suppressing a non-native one, but it's most likely just another invasive. I can't quite tell what it is, but I'll try and look it up later. It does have these trifoliate leaves that are, because it's the dry season, starting to fall off. A lot of the Haole Koa actually lose its leaves in the drier parts of the island. Around here it probably gets about 35 inches, more so once you get into the actual mountains. But that's not quite as dry as it gets in other parts of Oahu, and it's not really that dry overall, in my opinion. Just more of that vine. Anyways, let's continue and see what else we can find. So I'm only a little bit higher up right now, probably about 300 feet or 100 meters above sea level. I started to hike at sea level, by the way, and I can already tell there's some more species I just can't really identify. Well, actually, it appears to all be one, which is whatever this tree is in front of me. There's a couple of those that I do know, but funny enough, started making this clip right after I passed them all. So if I show up again, I'll let you know. Either way, the particular environment we're in right now is the Hawaiian dry forest. Or I guess Hawaiian tropical dry forest is the full name, which is one of the most, if not the most biodiverse of Hawaii's 4 ecoregions. Here as being the Hawaiian tropical moist forest, Hawaiian alpine shrublands, and Hawaiian lowland shrublands. Its competitor for the highest biodiversity being, of course, the Hawaiian tropical moist forest. Well, maybe it's not so obvious if you don't know what the 2 ecoregions are. And I should add that this is just a pretty rough way to group them all because there's a lot of variation in between just high elevation dry forests and low elevation dry forests. We're currently in a low elevation one, as well as high elevation and low elevation rainforests, and ones that are mesic, ones that get a lot of rain, when they get a lot of rain and fog. It's a lot of variation. All right, I'm gonna keep hiking now. Okay, I actually found another species I can identify. This tree with the big leaves in front of me is Morinda citrifolia, commonly known as Noni. You can see its Noni fruit down there. It's also known as Indian mulberry, which is a bit of a funny name because though its fruit looks like that of a mulberry tree, or at least a mulberry tree family member, it's not really part of that family at all. It's part of the family Rubiaceae, which is, some of you may know, the largest, or sorry, not largest, one of the very largest plant families in the world. I think ranks 4th with about 13,000 species, most of which are found in tropical rainforest and tropical forest habitat in general, like what we're in right now. Now, that plant is not native. It is an introduction by Polynesians, and it's not particularly aggressive invasive, so it's not even really that invasive at all. So I personally don't mind it that much. A lot of the Polynesian introduced plants were never super invasive to begin with. Now, there is a native species of Hawaiian Morinda, which I highly doubt that specimen is, so I'm going to say it's just a Noni tree for a video. But yeah, let's just keep going. All right, now things are really starting to look up because this is actually a very cool species, an endemic one to the Hawaiian Islands. This is Erythrina sandwicensis, or sandwicensis, whatever. Regardless of what the second part of its scientific name is, it's commonly known as Wiliwili, and it is, as I said, an endemic species to the Hawaiian Islands. It's got these really cool, very distinctive orange flowers, which I guess it blooms during the summertime, and it very clearly loses its leaves during the summertime as well, which is, interestingly, Hawaii's dry season, that's pretty interesting because most of the tropics and subtropics have the summertime as the wet season and the winter as a dry, if anything. And although the Hawaiian Islands, for the most part, have fairly consistent rainfall throughout the year, there is definitely a trend of the summer being a lot drier, with a few exceptions, than the winter, sometimes much drier. Right here it's only a little bit more, but still enough for the plant to want to shed its leaves. Now, Erythrina sandwicensis, I don't think it necessarily sheds its leaves because it's the summertime. Like if it was planted in a winter, dry, summer, wet environment, I'm pretty sure it would just shed its leaves in the winter. But it probably definitely survives a bit better in this kind of environment, which is, I think, really cool to think of. Something else about this plant is that it was very threatened by an invasive wasp that was producing a really terrible galls on the plant, and since it evolved without it, this insect, which normally affects other Erythrina plants, was causing a lot of damage to them, and they just had no resistance. They're getting wiped out. But to control them, this is what really saved the species from almost total extinction and annihilation, was that they introduced a parasitic wasp that actually lays eggs in the gall-forming wasp, and those will hatch and then eat the larvae from the inside out, which is kind of grotesque, but there's quite a lot of wasps that do that, and it definitely saved the plant from looking like a pretty bleak future for a time. There you go, that's kind of cool also. Nice view of the North Shore up here, so we get quite a lot better as I go on, but you can see down there that is an old rock quarry, which I think is used for, looks like it must be some kind of aquaculture there at the moment. Okay, well let's head on now. I want to get actually along the trail for a run. It's only about like less than 500 feet up. Some more good news. We can see some areas where some Wiliwili trees have very clearly been planted. Tell by those pink flags and the really small trees up there. So there's definitely some restoration efforts up here at least. As long as they're not being threatened by the wasps, they seem to compete just fine. But there is also some other invasive species up here I've encountered. Big one being Schinus terebinthifolia, commonly known as like Peruvian pepper or like Brazilian pepper tree. Probably definitely one of the worst invasive in the islands, right up there with the Leuceana leucocephala. But I can't seem to find any right now, unfortunately. So I can find in a second. It's quite windy today, so I'm very thankful for this wind-resistant microphone I finally decided to get last year. I can't believe it's been over a year since I've had it. There you go, it's another close-up view. I think this one might not be Wiliwili, but it looks kind of a lot like it, and it looks like the other trees behind it, which are, the fact that they're bald right now and leafless tells me it's quite likely the same plant. It's like some of these other plantings are not doing so well though, because I can't see any particular thing they should be. Alright, let's just carry on. I've also seen a Dodonaea viscosa, commonly known as wightii here, but or maybe sometimes this is hot bush elsewhere. It's typically a tropical plant throughout the old world and into the Pacific Islands, but I can't find it anymore. Sorry, there's a lot of people hiking this trail. I'm trying to film around them, so be a little patient from that. Speaking of which, here's a Schinus terebinthifolia I was talking about, or at least one of them. There's quite a few on this trail as you get higher up. Again, one of the most invasive species. It is a member of the family Anacardiaceae and is native to Brazil. I'm not sure if it's going to cause an allergic reaction. I don't want to test it out either. Here, I'll just rub against it. I doubt it will, because it's so commonly used as an ornamental plant in the tropics, like definitely in Florida where it's also invasive. Not sure if it was brought here for that purpose, but it's here now and it's out of control. They might have some biocontrol options they're trying to work on for it. Alright, there's another bigger one. Typically go to about small to medium trees. For the record, really quickly, this is a plant I believe is Dodonaea viscosa. And the common name in the Hawaiian language is Aulu. Pretty sure I'm pronouncing that right. Everates, member of Sapindus, and again, not endemic to Hawaiian Islands. We're about the 10% of native plant species that are not endemic. But it is indigenous, and it is found very commonly in tropical parts, I think, of most of the Old World, but maybe also the New World as well, especially in coastal areas. I don't know for sure, but let's carry on. So now we're almost to the top of the trail, or at least the part where it flattens out. We get on top of the shield volcano that this whole thing once was. Finding two of our invasive species. This firstly is Wiliwili robusta, commonly known as Silky Oak. It's a really cool tree, but unfortunately it is invasive. A native Australia. The genus Wiliwili is almost entirely endemic to that continent. It has over like 500 species, so it's quite diverse. And I mean, just look at it. It looks like it could be. It totally is like an Australian plant. It's hard to explain, but it just looks like one, like unmistakably so. I love the Australian flora. And speaking of which, we have another one here. This is Erythrina equicetifolia. I think it's equicetifolia, regardless. Another Australian native that's now quite invasive. I'd say more so than the Silky Oak. This one is super dominant on many of the dry ridgelines here, as well as on the coastal areas. And it's thick leaves, which look like needles, but are actually leaves. Just smother everything and prevent plants from growing underneath it. You know, someday soon, I might be able to go back to Australia for a while and make a lot more videos there. Fingers crossed. I'm not making any promises, but I'm really excited for that possibility. Look, never Wiliwili. Let's keep going on. Well, I'm finally at the top here. I think this is a good place to end this video, or at least start a part 2. But before I do that, I want to talk about this plant very briefly. This is Wightii indica. It's a member of the family Malvaceae. Well, formerly it was placed in the family Sterculiaceae before it was realized through genetics that that family really belonged entirely within Malvaceae, or maybe it was just broken up a bit and some went into that family. Regardless, it's an indigenous plant in Hawaii, really thought to be indigenous. I'm going to assume it is. It's a common kind of weedy plant throughout the Old World tropics. It's got these yellow flowers. The manual of the flowering plants of Hawaii still puts it in the family Sterculiaceae, which is a bit of a shame, not because for any fault of its own, but it's because the book is very out of date and it's probably not going to be updated for a while. It was last published before really modern genetic testing. Well, the good news is there is a new supplement to the manual being produced that should be released this year, which I kind of helped contribute a little bit to. I found some plants that were missing from it, the previous revisions to the list of updates, and contacted some people and they updated a bit. So I'm really happy about that. But hopefully it gets published later this year, and hopefully maybe they can eventually publish a third edition that really completely modernizes the manual. Anyways, thanks for watching and see you next time.